it's always, I mean, it's always a pleasure when it's Chris Tillman's turn to pitch. You've had him now for 3 years. 2014, 20 out of 21 starts, 3 runs or less. His last 21 starts last year, maybe a little less consistent. Ended up with 11 wins though. This year, the model of consistency, was that something that you guys talked about early in spring training?
Well, I think you talk about it all the time, Jim. Yeah, but you know Chris, and he came into this year knowing that last year wasn't his best year, and he wanted to prove some things. So I think the work he did in the offseason and just the mindset of every time you get the ball, wanting to go out there and keep your team in the game and give you some innings. And you know, Chris, he's just the ultimate professional when it comes to that, and certainly takes as much or if not more pride than anybody we have.
If you look at his numbers over, he really came back up like the middle of 2012, won 9 games. The next year, 16. You had him when he was 13-7. If I told you that he has the best winning percentage in baseball since 2012, would you be surprised?
I probably would, because you would never know that knowing Chris himself. But he's just every time you look up, even when he has his hiccups, you'd never know it by his demeanor on the mound. He is the guy that goes out there. He wants to oppose the best team. He wants to oppose the best pitcher. He takes pride in it. And every time this guy takes the ball, your club has a chance to win. And he manages innings as well as anyone, gets out of situations as well as anyone. And then when he gets on a roll, he just keeps going. So I guess I would be surprised, but that's a good thing because you'd never know it by knowing Chris or the way he goes about his job.
He talks about being even keel. He said, I'm never going to get too high, too low, because it's not fair to myself. It's certainly not fair to my teammates. What makes him tick?
I wish I knew. I think just the California youth and the childhood of growing up, and I think the real big perspective of what has happened. I know Chris got traded from Seattle. He came over here, and one of the things that made sense to me is he said he had trouble figuring it out. And he said he finally committed himself to the process, and he didn't care about results. So he went down to the minor leagues, however long it was, however much work it took. But he said, I'm committed to this process of being good and being consistent every time I take the ball. And I think that's what really set him off and made him the pitcher that he is.
I can't have an interview with you without talking generally, not only about Chris, but certainly about the starters and just the pitching staff. The last, 26 games, it looks like the whole staff has had a turnaround. The ERA was, 4.35 runs. Now it's about 3.5 runs. But I always talk about baseball being a marathon. Is that the way you look at it as a pitching coach?
Absolutely, Jim. From April right through the end of September to in October, you can't get, just like the pitchers, you can't get too high or too low or too up or too down on some guys. And understand that for the most part, we've got some young guys, Dylan and Gauze, and these guys are just really starting out. And we have Chris and, Giovanni, who's a veteran who comes to bring a veteran presence, which is nice. But I think the blend of those guys together, working together, and every side day they have, the starters are together. And I think with Dom co-working with Dom, and he knows so much about pitching and talking to you and picking your brain, and so much of us are on the same page, that I think the guys sense that. And I think they know that we're not going to get too upset when things go sideways, and we're not going to get overly concerned when things go too good. And I think they really, really know that we have their back, and we're there for them, and we're really all about just, competing and giving your team a chance to win. And, it's to their credit, it's nobody else. As you know, Jim, when you're on that mound, you're by yourself, and no manager, no coach, no player can understand unless you have been on the hill by yourself and the ups and downs. So I think these guys have taken all that into account and really come forward.